Good morning once again. We spoke a lot about Mexico, and I believe that Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, in general, the whole of Latin America, is lagging behind, a step behind what's happening in Mexico. I believe it was clear when they said that Mexico had a vision. You cannot hear me, no. Okay, now you can. So let's have the microphone handy just in case. So Mexico has this clearly industrialized vision. Once again, the president said that industrializing the country is key. In Argentina and in Brazil, we are lagging behind. Argentina is undergoing a process. This will never fail. Okay. Well, now you can hear me well. Argentina is in an economic process after a very complex situation. There's a reset. Many of the things here are being done correctly, but some others, in order to achieve a good growth, of course, we need to follow some steps. The restrictions do not help at any industrial development. But we are far from saying that we want an industrial policy. We need an industrial policy. We need to have a defense of the industry against China and against, unloyal trade. There are two Brazilians in the panel, so I don't want to talk about Brazil, because there are two specialists. But Brazil is coming to realize about the importance of inserting the industry a little bit more. Brazil used to be the industrial power of Latin America. Its GDP, 30% was its industry. But now there's a fall of employment, violent fall in Brazil. This was said by the previous speakers we had yesterday. So I believe that little by little things change. But we are far from Mexico, far from being able to profit from this regionalization phenomenon where Brazil may get into an American value change because of its capabilities. Jefferson, the industry has forecasted very interesting investments for the next years. This reflects optimism from the regional point of view with what may happen with the economy in Latin America. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. I believe that we need to be optimistic. I believe that we need to be cautious as well. We have the steel companies of Brazil, especially in Mexico. There are plans for investment today, but on the one hand, there are plans of strong investments that won't, in the first place, there is a consumption gap. Consumption of steel per capita is 223 kilograms per inhabitant, less than half the world average. This shows the important percentage of growth we have, but on the other hand, and nevertheless, for 40 years, Latin America has not been growing, has been stagnated. We need to be cautious to make investments because Latin America has not been growing. Some countries grow for a year, some others don't, but we grow very little in Latin America. There is another side to all this where we no doubt are a competitive sector. And we need to continue investing, not only speaking about capabilities or skills, but if the country grows, we need to invest. We need to invest also to become competitive in modern equipment, in new technology, with quality, with costs. That is, we need to be competitive. if I see there are investments which are important done in Latin America, but always with optimism, because we have a growth potential in consumption in Latin America. But we need to be cautious, because not only countries in Latin America have, well, some countries like Argentina, who is going through a special situation, we politically and economically may have some problems sometimes. So we need to surmount these problems. Another problem in Latin America is the import of Chinese steel. Not only Chinese steel, but also finished products. And it is very important to look into this, because they are importing and we cannot sell. We have gaps and opportunities in Latin America. We need to invest to become more competitive, to have more quality, to have a high added value product, but we have some risks we face. Now I'm going to ask Gustavo. Can you hear me, Gustavo? I'm going to try to talk in Portuguese. Okay, thank you, Gustavo. The steel industry requires innovation in order to keep on growing. See, how can innovation impact competitiveness and productivity of steel production? Your Portuguese is better than mine. I already congratulated you three, so let me especially thank all our clients and associates who are at this event, which are the reason for our existence. And I want to say hello or greet women and the younger generations. Yesterday, I participated from an important panel, and Ricardo Morena was speaking, and I was looking at the audience, and by seeing that there are more women, I felt happy, because they are helping us face these challenges related to this topic that we deal with in the panel, which is innovation. It is great to innovate. It is great to do different things. It is great to launch new products, to give names to these products, to visit the startups, and to participate at contests. We all love to do that. We all love to do that. But how should we solve the problem with all this innovation, with all these initiatives in the steel companies? It's not different for innovation to solve significant problems. So quickly, there are two big problems where we need to use innovation. One problem is work safety in the steel industry. It is impressive to see how in the industrial sector in general, annually, we have hundreds of accidents. So innovation, technology has been very important for us. In the case of Gerdau, numbers are very clear, and innovation and technology have helped us innovate in accidents. During the last years, we've been able to reduce work accidents. It is a severe problem in the sector that has been solved with innovation. But another point of innovation is how can we improve financial performance of the company. You know the size or the amount of inefficiencies that you have in your companies. If I pose these questions to all of you, would you know how to answer it? Because we need to solve the problem of inefficiencies. In our case, it was not different. The challenges in the specific case of Gerdau, I'm sure that in your companies you have a similar problem. We have inefficiencies that may be solved by innovation and transformation that reach 20% of cash flow. So maybe if we could solve these inefficiencies with digital transformation and innovation, my point is the focus we may lay on solving problems, not innovation by innovation per se, because it doesn't help us in doing business. Because the great opportunity we might have is the one referring to the industry of our operations, 4.0, utilization of predictive algorithms and artificial intelligence in order to be able to have a cost standard like we never had, understanding that this competition with China will still be present every day in the steel industry. It is key for us to look for new knowledge and innovation in order to achieve this level of efficiency in investments, because this will help us combat unloyal exports and imports and trade. You've been here during the Alacero summit, and the zero-emission issue is one of the main challenges. What are the plans in the mid and long term in order to reach towards zero emission? Yes. In the first place, it is clear, at least in ArcelorMittal, in Latin America, probably all the companies are considering the zero-emission aspect. I'm going to speak about Brazil. In a short time, in the south of Brazil, we had a lot of rainfall. We had a lot of deaths caused by natural disasters. And now we have droughts as well in the center and north of Brazil. Therefore, it is very clear that the world cannot continue the way it is. We have the responsibility, and we are going to work on that, on changing things, because it's not only the steel industry. The steel industry does not contribute to zero emissions, but the steel industry contributes to 37% of emissions, 33% of CO2 emissions through gas stoves. This is very important. So I'm going to speak about what has been ArcelorMittal, the first steel producer in the world that established a target for the year 2030 of reducing emissions and reaching the target of zero emissions in the year 2050. We have 14 research and development centers, 1,700 engineers that study these aspects. And one important point is to develop new processes and equipment. We've invested 500 million euro in these research and development centers and in association with some companies. And the plan we have, the idea is to invest until the year 2030, $2 billion around the world to reach this target. So it is very clear that the steel industry has to contribute to zero emissions, but we won't achieve that with the processes and equipment in place today. We have transition stages. One of them is when a blast furnace becomes obsolete or finishes its shelf life. we need to switch to gas furnace or electrical one, and then switch to hydrogen. So we have this roadmap that reduces emissions by half from blast furnace to coke. But we are studying other solutions. The transformation of gases, for example, the reinjection of gases. We have a lot of studies undergoing, and I believe that the steel industry will find a way out to contribute to zero emissions.
It's also important to say that Europe, we know that our group has 35% of its operations in Europe. So we have quite a lot of information. So the European community will invest by 2030, 28 billion, governments, 38 billion euro in this arena. ArcelorMittal, our group, has an agreement with the governments on Germany, France, and Spain, and all the changes in equipment, changes in processes to emit less CO2. Normally, these investments will be made half and half, 50 and 50. So this will be something interesting and very serious for the companies in Latin America, because I do not see how, or so far, how the governments in Latin America will follow these examples set by the Europeans. Because of the economic conditions, financial conditions, everything is different. So I see this as a serious issue. We at the company, we face this very seriously. We've been investing a lot. Of course, we will still chase this reduction goal by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2050. That's something that should be placed on the table, and it is on the table. But, well, on the European table, but I don't see this on the Latin American table. And now, our government in Brazil has started to talk about the carbon credits, carbon market. So we need companies to adopt this. The population, people have to embrace this, because we want to reduce greenhouse gases. But how? The way we do it, well, everyone should be working, companies and governments together. Otherwise, we will not be able to make progress in Latin America. I was thinking about what you said. There's another actor, the civil society, asking companies to do this. Is that happening in Brazil? Not yet. I see that this is not so strong. I think the government is doing it, but the society, no. I myself, as part of the society, well, this is what happens around the world. What's going on has to change. And I think that we can all make a contribution. The steel industry should also make a contribution, as well as governments and the civil society. You asked me about the civil society. Well, and what happens with clients? Instead of society, let's speak about clients or customers. Many customers don't ask us about our plans to reduce CO2. But when will, foot the bill? Well, they say you. So when you spoke about civil society, that means everyone, the entire chain, society at large should tackle this topic. Are we willing to pay more in order for us to have a better world? Yes, we are. That's what we have to tackle. And if that, falls on the hands of only one sector, that sector will die. I see that the steel industry does not have a good profitability margin to reach zero emissions by 2050 with its own resources. I don't see that viable. Based on your regional perspective, how is this challenge being tackled? This is a kind of imperative here to stay. It's here to stay. This big goal, zero emission, decarbonization, and this changes the way we approach industries, right? Well, yes, I think there are two things here. One thing is the steel industry. Another one is zero emission, decarbonization. By itself and in Latin America, zero emission, that has a cost. If we want to have a zero emission society, there is a cost, investment. You know, in Europe, many subsidies are being given. People, through taxes, are subsidizing lots of investments. Other countries are doing nothing. But this should be a global effort, not just a few societies, because otherwise nothing will change. So we have to see where Latin America is standing. From Mexico downwards, we are the smallest emitters. China, the US, Europe, they emit many more, much more CO2. So we, Latin America, we're doing better as societies, better than the rest of the world. The rest of the world has to make an effort before we are forced to engage in the same effort. But the steel industry, well, huge efforts. We are working very hard. Direct reduction technologies. This is the technology being used even in Canada and in Europe by ArcelorMittal in order to decarbonize some operations. We are doing that in Mexico. Natural gas in Mexico is quite widespread. We are making lots of investments, changing. We are using natural gas and direct reduction. This reduces emissions by 2/3. So you see a significant effort. The problem that you find there is what's going on around the world. Decarbonizing Europe or Latin America. If the rest of the world does not decarbonize, well, we will have to find a way to protect this area. China, Vietnam, India, today they are building 150 tons, for blast furnaces. Today, in these three countries, so the highest emission levels. So new investments in three countries that will compete against us, and they will emit 3 times more. So we have to examine this very closely. The Latin American steel sector is strongly committed in some markets with competitive advantages, like Mexico is walking towards this goal, the US as well. In Brazil, we have to see what road ahead we are going to take. Because we cannot be forced to follow this road when competitors around the world are taking a different route. And they are not decarbonizing, and they are not paying this cost. So same question as before. Do you think there is an increasing demand in society? A bigger demand for sustainability, or that policies, are going forward? Not yet, I would say. In Latin America, because of what I have said, each of us in Latin America, we emit CO2. It's 1/3 only of the global emissions, or emissions around the world. So we are clean, I would say. Latin America is a continent or a region, and we are, 90% of the energy mix in Brazil is clean, so it's green, decarbonized already. So we are leaders in order to have an impact on climate change. We here can do very little. So, Gustavo, in Brazil. So, let's speak about people. What's the challenge that faced by the steel industry in order to retain talent? Okay, that's a good question. I mean, people, because it's key and crucial for our future. Because at the end of the day, who transforms is people. Even more so and increasingly, companies should focus on people. Yeah, I deeply believe in the answer I'm going to give you. 70% of my time I devote to people in college, at university. You know, I talk to people, I talk to students, I visit businesses, new generations, the future of our steel sector, specifically within Gerdau. I know we have the problem at home. It's not that people don't want to work with us. The problem is not that young people want to work at technological companies. The thing is that we cannot show them a future. We seem unable. We cannot. We seem unable to tell these guys that there is no more interesting sector than the steel industry. If I go to university and someone asks, what do you do? I'm going to say, I produce steel. The steel industry, do they know what I mean if I tell them that I work in the most important sector for mankind, which is crucial because of its transformative power, that it has to do with the future of humanity, that I would love for them to join us? That's a different story, because people don't want to work at companies. They want to work with other people, with leaders that will show them the way. We have to change our sales pitch. I said, let's stop speaking about steel-making industry, this old phrase. I mean, we have to wear a modern hat. Let's speak about the future, transformation, changes, and we have to set an example. You know, I remember when I became the CEO at Gerdau. Andre was 53, and he told me, I made my contribution to the organization, and now I can contribute by playing a role in the board. And people see organizations, businesses, after spending 10, 15 years as CEOs, without setting an example. Because we don't normally say that people will have no opportunities. Now we are concerned about this. I, as a CEO, I have this clear picture in my mind. People who surround me are well prepared to play this role and create opportunities. This is my contribution. Then others will follow and who will do a better job. And an example, you know, makes no sense to be a CEO for a long time, because sometimes, you know, people wonder, when will I get my turn? We have to change the way in which we talk to people, to youngsters, how we talk to talent, to college students, how we develop the internal talent, how we provide opportunities, because leadership is shown through the example, through what we say, what we do. So the biggest challenge that we face as businesses is to overcome this hurdle, to attract talent, exceptional talent, so we can help ourselves as a sector, as a business in the future. So we were speaking about the importance of leadership, inspiring leaders. So Jefferson, how do you prepare these new leaders? How do you create them? They should be good talent managers. They have to be skilled at new technologies, artificial intelligence, etc. How do you prepare and create these new leaders? Well, before answering your question about how we create these new leaders, I would like to convey the vision, our vision about technology, innovation, artificial intelligence. You know, for us, These are tools to be more competitive. In our group, we don't use these words, I mean technology, innovation, we just use technology and innovation to be more competitive. We have to be competitive when we speak about performance, quality, cost, safety, as Gustavo has said. Safety is the top priority in our group. In Latin America, we are benchmark in the world of safety, and we use technology in order to run a very safe operation. How to prepare to create these leaders? Well, we have a plan. We have a very strong and robust plan to develop people's mindset. We want to change our leaders' mindset. We, specifically in Brazil and Argentina, in Latin America in general, we call this AM Leaders. It's a training, a one-year-long training, in which we develop all managerial levels up to Jefferson. Every year we select one specific topic and we work with renowned universities from Brazil or abroad, and we develop our staff. Last year the topic was leadership, people in leadership, and this year technology and innovation. We have strongly worked. For example, one example, I personally and another 19 leaders, 20 in all. And you know, we traveled to China. We stayed there for 2 weeks and visited 13 high-tech companies. We came back to Brazil, and then we put together a working plan. We engaged in debates to see how we're going to tackle the future. We are changing our mindset and showing our leaders that there is no future without innovation and technology. We have to be more competitive. We have spoken about China quite a lot. I visited China a month ago. We spoke about subsidies. But you know what? What we have observed there is impressive. They receive subsidies, but they use the subsidies very well, very effectively. They have high-quality companies, high-tech companies. For instance, we visited the largest container port in the world. Yeah, it's an autonomous port. We spent there around 3 hours, and there was no employee. We saw no one, no human face, no workman, no operator, the biggest container port in the world. No human being, but 150 working in research and development. You see, 150 in research and development, in artificial intelligence. But no one actually working in the port. When we speak about China, we're not speaking about subsidies. Subsidies are being channeled into important things. That's why they are becoming more and more competitive. We have to use technology and innovation to be more competitive. We developed around 6-7 years ago something we call Steel Lab, an open lab, an open innovation lab. And then we have something we call New T. It's an open lab for digital development. And we have trained over 50 people. We call them innovation ambassadors. And we have this project, this working plan. We have goals. We work very strongly centered around technology and innovation, and the ultimate purpose is to increase competitiveness. It's not just innovation for innovation's sake. We have goals, and we have a gap, for instance. So we need technology and innovation to close the gap and become the best. That's the way we work. We are involved in many projects. We invest a lot in our people's mindset. We call it Center of Excellence, COE. We have 15 engineers, mathematicians, data scientists, 15 people who help us develop and implement all this artificial intelligence work, all this innovation, technology. So I would say that today, at present, we have a strong focus on technology and innovation in order to perform better, to become more competitive. We have spoken a lot about China, but what I saw in China is that they are using the money, subsidies, to become more competitive. Today, the three companies we visited in China are high-tech businesses, low costs, excellent performance. So it's not only government subsidies, you see, and we are following the same pathway, and we keep improving our competitiveness through technology and innovation. So I have another question, because talent management, the challenges posed by new technologies in the creation of new leaders, I would like to know your uptake. How do you retain, how do you capture talent, how do you train talent for a more challenging world? Well, I think that we are all doing similar things. First, I believe there is a big radical change in how we can manage to embrace the steel company. Many years ago, this was like an old-fashioned industry. That was their view, a century-old company sector. Now, when a young worker joins Ternium or a company, they see a high-tech product, huge plants, very different from what they had in their imagination. And they see that this is a product of the future, even facing challenges. And other products will emit more CO2 than steel today. So they will see, they learn that steel will be an important actor in the decarbonization process. And part of the efforts to contain climate change, steel is practically used in everything: wind farms, solar panels, electric motors. Everything used in decarbonization, has a steel component. And I think this is a radical change. We do it, in many areas. How we capture operators, supervisors, our technical training, is highly focused so that the new entrants are better prepared, better equipped with more technical skills, technical knowledge about safety, the environment. And also, we focus on leaders and future leaders, how we attract them. Well, we provide training, in-house training, imparted with universities, with higher education institutions. We bring together different groups from different countries in order to show them different goals and to impart more targeted training to show them how they can interact, even if they are from different countries. It's very important to have this multifaceted group. And we also focus, or we try to have more diversity. So big efforts have been made in this regard to attain more diversity. So let's go back to China. You mentioned this when we spoke about decarbonization and the zero emission goal. Some rules are applicable to some and not to others. So can you go deeper, give us more details and the impact on Latin America, taking into account this idea that mentioned by Shannon? Whoever wins the election in the US, we will see a deepening, an intensification of this tension.
I believe there's going to be an intensification, of course, yes. And once again, in Latin America, I believe we need to understand where we stand. I share Jefferson's vision. It's not that Chinese are bad producing, but they do so through subsidies and special schemes and an industrial policy which is focused on dominating industries. You may compete against any company, but it's difficult to compete against a state. It is practically impossible. So I believe that we need to understand all this, and we need to implement policies again. Latin America, I don't believe any country in Latin America or any state is going to subsidize different industries. So the mechanisms are to work in our competitiveness, to work with the governments in order to see how to provide more competitiveness to the industry, how to foster the value chain, and how there is a use of the laws to defend the industry the way Europe or the US is doing, or Vietnam proper, that's putting dumpings on Chinese steel. But we need to understand that. Let me talk about another case in order to understand how China works on all these schemes of not market. PET. PET is produced with natural gas and with oil or petroleum. China does not have either, and 60 or 50% of the cost comes from there. Today, China is generating more PET capacity than the whole consumption in the world. Through incentives of creating this overcapacity to dominate an industry. So China, we talked about overcapacity of steel. In PET, it's even worse. In a place where they have no competitive advantage to manufacture PET, they lead the world. So U.S. is showing us the way. It is quite correct. I think this is a way to go. If we want to maintain jobs, quality jobs, we need to mark a difference, and we need to compete in equal conditions. Europe is doing the same thing. India as well. Mexico as well. Brazil is taking the first steps, I believe, and the rest of Latin America should imitate that. I go back to Gustavo, taking up again something that Máximo and Jefferson said. So, Gustavo, how have unloyal imports affected business in Latin America? Your Portuguese is very good. Yes, congratulations. Before I answer, I want to reinforce the aspect of safety or security, which is a key issue. We've spoken about that, and I wanted to congratulate Jefferson for having talked about this as well, because this is a relevant aspect for our companies. As to China, I believe that Jefferson and Máximo have already talked about the main aspects. I wanted to add only one aspect that was a learning I had during the event yesterday. Most of you were 2 days here, and many of you have taken notes in your agenda. Some others talked about the main aspects or topics, something that I always do. And as of tomorrow, I will do that. My team, when they come back from these type of summits, I ask them, throughout these 2 days of Alacero, what are you going to change in your lives and in the life of Gerdau as of now to make the company operate better? 5 or 6 things. I mean, I want the 2 main aspects that would change your lives today. And this applies to me as well. The 2 things that I've learned throughout these 2 days. One came from the panel yesterday of Ricardo Amorin. Ricardo Amorin talked about an aspect which is key, and I believe that we need to do things better regarding China. We need to make public opinion turn in favor of us. When I heard him, he said that people need to understand that we are speaking about employment. What happens in China is that China is employing Chinese and leaving out Mexicans, Brazilians, Argentinian. So the public opinion needs to understand that this is a war for employment. And I think we need to emphasize this to the public opinion and show society that what's at stake is job creation, because there are many sectors that do not agree with these policies of trade defense because they say that it increases inflation, and people start believing that. We need to change this mindset of society for people to understand that our jobs are at stake, that our families depend on our jobs, and our jobs are at stake when China wants to continue with this unloyal trade. So a takeaway from China for me is that we need to improve our narrative and communicate better to the public opinion so that they understand the impact of all this in our lives. I go back to you now, Máximo. How do you see the movement of reduction in import rates in steel in Argentina, and how does this impact the steel industry at a local level? That's a very good question. Yes. I believe that Argentina, once again, has a lot of imbalances. First, we need to reduce the cost in the country. We want to have an industry in the country. We need to reduce our cost. Argentina has distortive costs, a lot of taxes, a lot of rules and regulations. So I understand the position of the government of reducing inflation, which is correct. Of course, we need to stabilize macroeconomy. This is the way to go. But if we want to have an industry, we need to do that and make our industry more competitive. We need to work in competitiveness before saying, I'm going to open up to the world and let the industry do what it can. I have a question related to a decision of the U.S. The government is blocking the purchase of U.S. steel on behalf of Nippon Steel. Does this have to do with regionalization of the industry, Jefferson? I would like to answer another type of question. I'm sorry. I see that the steel industry is quite fractioned in the world. There should be a concentration. ArcelorMittal, they merged, and I see that there is the importance of merging. Nippon is purchasing another company, and this type of mergers are important for the steel industry in the world. But regarding this issue of the U.S., I'd rather not make comments because ArcelorMittal was one of the competitors to purchase the other company. So let's see what happens. But I think this movement is important for the steel industries around the world, this higher concentration of mergers. What have governments done in terms of trade defense. Has this been enough, Gustavo? Governments have been very slow in taking measures, measures that be effective in order to combat this unfair competition or import. We've seen in Brazil the beginning of a debate that needs to grow more and more so that, in fact, we can implement measures to fight back this situation, which is hardly acceptable in the countries in Latin America. It is clear to us from Alacero Congress that as companies operating in Latin America, we have technology in place, capability, we have people to compete on an equal ground with any steel producer, as far as conditions are fair. So we are not requiring protection from the governments. What we want them to do is create the conditions for us to compete on an equal ground. We are far from that. We are going to continue relentlessly showing the authorities of Brazil and the rest of the countries that we need to create fair competition for the steel industry to thrive in Latin America and worldwide. So let's go to the conclusions now. Well, finally, I would like to convey to you, in the first place, that my group and myself, we strongly believe that there won't be a world without steel. It doesn't exist. Those who came by airplane, by train, we are here, and this was all achievable thanks to steel. So we believe in a steel world. May be different, but that's what we believe in. And another thing is that we are optimistic. As I said before, I started cautious, but we are optimistic. ArcelorMittal, our group, is here in Argentina, in Brazil, in South America, investing $4 or $5 million to become more competitive with new products, more services, and we believe in our people, in our staff, in our executives who work with us. And we are highly motivated vis-a-vis the challenges. We have many challenges ahead. We spoke about China, but we spoke about China all the time. But in ArcelorMittal, we have to be more competitive than they are. The government may help us or not, but we shouldn't care about that. Let's discuss. Let's become more competitive. We have a research center, a center for research development. We need to invest on people. We believe in ArcelorMittal and in steel as a business. So let's move forwards. We will have ups and downs, of course. Difficult moments like product imports, imports of manufactured products, industrial products in Latin America. But we have competition. We have good technology. We have people, and we need to move forward. Steel will always exist everywhere. Wherever we go, we will see steel. So, Gustavo, what do you think? Yeah. My message is for our partners, our clients, our trade partners, technology companies, etc., those who are participating here at the event, in presence and virtually. It is very necessary now to join efforts in order to face all the difficulties and surmount them. We need to work together, closer with our challenges, because my challenge is the challenge of everybody in the industry. And we need to work closer and together, because there are no limits to surmount challenges. If we face them together, we will surmount them. And this is my message. I coincide in the optimism mentioned by Jefferson. As Ternium, we are investing more than $5 billion in Latin America, and I believe that we are in a unique situation. This regionalization of the world, this geopolitical problem you are talking about, will benefit Latin America. We need to leverage this. Mexico is at the front, but the same thing applies to all the countries. I carry with me a good conclusion. I see a lot of people today outside the trade, the steel industry, that coincide with our vision. They speak about regionalization. They speak about industrial policy. A message we've been conveying for a long time is being reflected today in the need of saying the government, the institutions, the public opinion is already looking at these crazy people from the steel industry. Not only will steel disappear, it will not disappear, but they are right. The industry is a very important part of the economy. It is the way to go with developing countries such as Latin American countries, and we need to do this together. Last message. It is important for us to work together towards this development. It is no good to leave mining aside or to just save our clients. It's all the value chain that needs to work together for the benefit of Latin America. If we don't work together, we won't achieve success. Thank you, thank you, thank you. A great thing to take home with us. Thank you, the three of you, and Mario Werneck from Brazil. Thank you.